What's going on, everybody? Got a pretty cool tutorial for you today with the original Xbox. And this is something that's been around for quite a while, actually, but I've noticed that most of the tutorials for this have kind of disappeared online. So this is kind of a forgotten thing that a lot of people don't even know you can do anymore. So what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to take the 1.0 heatsink and fan assembly and all that stuff. And we're going to be putting it on a, in this case, I'm going to be showing you on a 1.4. Now, you do have to keep in mind that this will not work on a 1.6. They did change the motherboard in the 1.6/1.6B versions, so you're not going to be able to do this sort of thing. But on any other version, you can actually get the fan to install and work just like you would on a 1.0, where you've got the smaller heatsink but with the fan. Because if we take a look back here, and this camera is terrible at autofocus, but we've still got the connectors right here for that fan. So all we have to do is just solder everything in, and boom, we've got the extra fan. Now, in reality, these larger fans do a fine job of cooling. So one benefit you will get from this, even though the larger heat sinks on the later versions like this do a fine job of cooling, once they start getting a little bit of dust on them, it really does start to bog down the airflow from it. So it doesn't take long for these to get a little bit of dust on them, and you start getting hotter temperatures out of your GPU. And that's one of the benefits of switching over to the 1.0 system, because even if you got some dust on it, the fan doing a direct pull off the heatsink, even if you haven't cleaned it in a month or two or whatever, it's going to cool it much better. So that's one big benefit to doing this. Now, you can do this also with third-party parts, but the other cool thing, too, is that you can. We're going to be using all original OEM parts here. There's no parts you have to buy like extra, but you can essentially still do this with aftermarket parts. I'm not going to cover like what type of parts and stuff you need if you want to go that, because again, we're going to be using all original parts here. Obviously, one of the biggest parts of my channel is preservation of as much of the hardware as possible. So this is a great way if you've got a 1.0 that's just completely shot and either not fixable or it's not worth fixing. You can absolutely pull the heatsink and everything you need off of a 1.0 console and help both preserve some of the hardware, as well as get a better cooling system on your version. Now, because a lot of the time it's going to be difficult for people to, most people don't have a ton of boards and consoles sitting around. So I am putting together a kit for this, and the kit is going to include everything you need to do this mod. So if you don't have a donor, or you don't feel like spending 25, 30, 40 bucks to get a console, to get a donor, or you don't feel like searching for a 1.0, because again, you would have to find a 1.0 so you could scout the stuff off of it, check the link in the description of this video, because I'm going to have this all set up in kit form. It's going to have your heatsink, the heatsink clamp, it's going to have the fan screws to attach, it's going to have a little thing of heatsink compound, and it's going to have the connector, and this is an OEM connector as well that's pulled. Now for this, I'm also not going to show you, if you're using your own stuff, how to remove everything. It's pretty self-explanatory how to remove the fan and all that stuff, but you do need to desolder the actual connector that the fan plugs into. You can get these connectors as well, aftermarket, I guess you could say, but you're going to have to be careful. And let me show you an example. While I was preparing for doing this tutorial, I was trying to find multiple solutions. So I found a little kit like this, where it's just got a bunch of, kind of standardized connectors and stuff like that. And you can find some of these that will work technically, but it's going to need a little bit of finagling to get it to work. For instance, one of these that came in this kit is the right size for everything, but it's a different type of connector for the fan. So you may have to like clip some of the plastic off of this one to get it to work correctly. So if you're going the third party route, just keep that in mind. The connector for the fan is going to be important, and you may have to play around with it. Again, that's another benefit of this kit that's got everything. What we've got here, we've got all of our stuff here that we're going to set aside, and we're going to start just by getting the GPU heatsink and stuff off. To start off with, the GPU connectors can be really difficult to remove. They're pretty stuck. So you can use heat to make it easier. So one thing you can do, you can just run the console, let it run and turn on, maybe even have it running a game for a little bit, and then immediately take it all apart and stuff. But again, it's going to cool off pretty quick. You can also use some sort of heat gun or something just to heat the GPU heatsink up before you remove it, because that does make it a tad bit easier. The main thing too is you want to make sure when we're prying this off that you don't accidentally dig into the motherboard, dig into any of the traces. Now, luckily, the one I've got here, I've already kind of wiggled it loose a little bit, so I don't think I'm going to have too much problem. So what we're going to do first is we're going to get this off of here, and we're going to get everything prepped to get everything, all the new stuff installed, okay? So first we're going to get a little Phillips head screwdriver, and all we're going to do is where the tab is right here. In some versions, the tab is on the other side. It just depends on the version. You're just going to push down on the tab, and then you're going to pry backwards or outwards while you're pushing down, and that's going to get one side off. And then you'll see that's pretty loose now. We can just pull that right off. Now, like I said, you're going to have some trouble with this, but a good way to kind of get some leverage, you've got your plastic holder right here around it. You can use that as leverage to kind of get under it and pry up. That way you're not accidentally digging into the motherboard and possibly causing damage. But you want to be careful too, because you can crack that and cause some issues there. So we're just going to go around and pry that up like that. And as you can see, we've got the heatsink off, and we're going to get this cleaned up now. You can get some special wipes to clean this off, but I usually just use some rubbing alcohol. You can also let it sit there and soak if you're having a little bit of problems. Something else that I will use here, these are actually razor blades, but they're plastic. These do pretty good. Doesn't do as good on the original Xbox because this surface is not totally flush, but it can definitely help you get some of this pried off of here. So we're just going to take that, and we're going to start trying to get this old heatsink compound off as much as we can. Okay, so I've got most of that off. You will notice that there's still some that's around the edges that's kind of squeegeed out. That's not as important. There are some people that make a deal about getting every little tiny molecule of this stuff off, but especially the stuff that's kind of squeegeed around the edge. You don't have to get real crazy with that. All you're trying to do is mainly get the stuff off the top. You're going to want to make sure that this has a good little bit to dry. That rubbing alcohol can mix in with your heatsink compound. So we're going to set this aside for a little bit and make sure that it's fully dried off before we start putting heatsink compound on it. And in the meantime, we can also go ahead and start working on our next parts. Additionally, too, I'll add you'll want to do the same thing to your heatsink. If you're pulling one from a donor board that you've got to clean the heatsink the same way you did the GPU. So what we can do now is we can work on the connector. We're going to go over to my soldering station now. And all we're going to do is, if you look right here, there's actually a small connector right here that has nothing in it. It's basically blank. And that's actually the same connector for the GPU fan that was on the 1.0. It just doesn't have the connector or anything to go with it. They just left this on here until 1.6. That's why this is actually a pretty easy mod. Okay guys, so we're over here in my soldering area now. We're going to take our connector. Now you have to bear with me a little bit because we're working with two different sides here. I'm mainly going to try to show you from this side, which is my reverse side that I'm normally soldering from. So Bear with me here if it's a little janky as far as me soldering and stuff. I'm using my opposite hands and for the camera view and stuff. But one thing I wanted to touch on this connector, you want your connector to be about like this. So you've got the long side of the pins with this long white piece of plastic right here. That's your top. That's where the fan actually plugs in. And this side is your bottom. You want to make sure that you've got about the same amount of distance here with these legs. They're actually not like super sturdy as far as inside the connector, so they can slide around. In fact, if you get this in the kit form, it's possible that the legs might even slide around in shipping. So all you have to do is just find like a hard surface and kind of push down on it to even up the legs if they're a little bit off. So yeah, where we're at, the connector is right here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we want to make sure we got this lined up. So on the connector itself, you're going to see that there is a little white piece of plastic. Now, there's a few of the versions that I realized didn't have this, but that little white piece of plastic right there does have a little hole it kind of gets inserted in. It's kind of a stabilizer. So you'll see that with the 3 pins, there's also a hole, and that can help you line this up properly. But you'll see that the back where the plastic is with the clip that goes up is going towards the Ethernet port, and you'll notice that you've got your the other connector, which is the exact same for your regular case fan. It's going in there this way. Just keep in mind that you're doing the opposite. Okay, so you want it to be, if you've got them where they're both lined up exactly the same, then you're doing wrong. You want to flip it because they need to be the opposite way. So they're kind of almost like facing each other. So all we're going to do is we've got our soldering iron. I've got mine already heated up. We're going to get some solder on it. All we really have to do too, because these are essentially blank, is you should just be able to line this up and do just like you would with a capacitor, where you just heat up the 3 pins, get them kind of started, and then you just kind of wiggle it back and forth to kind of slowly get it to go down in there, and it shouldn't be too hard at all. Now watch me have a hard time with it though. So I've got a little solder, and again, bear with me because I'm going lefty here for this video. We're going to line this up on the 3 holes. And then I'm just going to start heating these up. Okay, so I've got them started at the bottom there. So I want to kind of focus up on the top here. Okay, and then I'm just slowly working. Again, we're going to come back and clean this up, so don't worry about if there's bridges. We're just trying to get it pushed down in there. If it gets a little hot for you, you can always use some sort of clamps or little tiny pliers to hold it as well to get that last little bit. This is pretty well on there, but it's just a tiny bit at the top I want to push in a little bit further. So I'm going to kind of use this to push it while I heat it up some more so that it's totally flush. Again, at this point we'd probably be good, but I kind of want to get it a little bit better. There we go. Okay, so now that is totally in there real good. You can see on the front, and again, if the autofocus doesn't do good, I apologize, but you can see that this is totally flush, just like this one would be. You can always use this one for a reference if you're not sure if that's down far enough. What we're going to do now, too, is we're going to flip it. We're going to look at our connections. And I've still got some bridges here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up my iron a little bit, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to get these bridge legs in here. Just kind of clean some of that solder up. Okay, now we're going to come back. Get a whole thing of solder out now. And we're going to do these so we get some proper solder joints on them. So we're just going to heat up each leg one at a time. Come in with a little solder. That way we get a nice clean joint there. So all I'm doing is I'm just kind of preheating the leg, making sure that it's getting nice and heated up. And I'm coming in with the solder. We're just going to do the same thing with each leg. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back over to the table, because that's all the soldering we're actually going to have to do here. And that way we can finish up the prep for this whole thing, get it all put together, and we can test it out and see how it works. All right, so now we're back at the table. And what we're going to do is we're going to just start putting everything together and piecing it together so that we can get it plugged in and give it a test and make sure everything's good. So first things first, we got to get the heat sink on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to open, I'm using the same, if you get the kit, the same little pouch that I'm going to send with it of thermal compound. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of make an X on this. And unlike a lot of other chips, this chip does not spread very well like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our X on there, and then we're going to just go ahead and put this on there. We're going to kind of wiggle it around, kind of rock it back and forth a little bit. Then you come back and look, as you can see, got a little place over here. You're going to add a little bit more. If you see any other places that don't look like they, have enough, add a little bit more. And then we'll do the same thing. Okay, that's looking pretty good there. So for this, you'll see that the heatsink has one of the sides that kind of goes over to the left. That's the side you're going to put up next to this heatsink right here. So what I mean by that is you can see this side is flat and this side kind of goes out and over. Put that side facing the CPU. And then we've got that all checked in there. We're going to take the clamp, and again, this is the specific clamp for this. The one for any other version will not fit, so you have to have one of these. We're going to start by getting it in the clamp right here. You just kind of go underneath it and pull up. Then we just go around it. We're going to take our flathead screwdriver again while holding this side. We're going to kind of pry this out just a little bit so that it slides out. Then we push it down and you'll hear that click. Now if it moves a little bit like that, don't worry about that. That's totally okay. These just do move. The reason why I didn't move before is because it's so stuck on there with that original heatsink compound. But yeah, the main thing is you just want it to be good and flush on there like that. Make sure it's not wobbling, like rocking. But if it just slides a little bit, that's okay. All right, so now what we can do is we can take our fan, and we're going to need both of the little screws, or all four of the little screws, and it's going to go on just about like this. You'll see too that it actually, even though you can't really tell, the way it's designed, it actually does only really go in here one place, and it's real centered on there. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Get our screws in. Okay, there we go, and that's nice and snug on there. And then of course we'll go ahead and plug it in. Again, make sure you don't accidentally plug it in here, because you're still going to have your case fan installed here. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a power supply and just hook it up real basically. You're going to want to be careful when you do this. You can go ahead and put it all in there, but I'm going to do it like this, because if it turns out we didn't get a good solder joint or something on here somewhere, it's going to be a lot easier not have to take it all apart again. So I'm going to get my power supply, just get everything connected. That way we can test it real quick. Okay, so now I've got everything all set up. Again, be very careful while you're doing this. Get everything plugged up and connected. I've also got my power button connected. If you are weary about testing it like this, then just fully install it back in the console and all that. And additionally, with this one, we tested it too. This motherboard that I'm using has actually got a totally another issue. So I believe when we turn this one on, it should frag. This is because I've got to do some trace repair on this one to get it working up and stuff. I just wanted to use this for this tutorial. But we should be able to turn this on now, see the fan spin up. Again, this should frag. So they'll probably spin up and stop, but that's because of the frag, okay? But all we're really checking is we're making sure the fan is good and in there and it's not going all over the place or whatever. You do have to keep in mind that these little fans get damaged by almost nothing at all. So you know, if it's wanting to go all over like this, then you're going to need another fan. But mainly, we're just making sure that we've got good solder joints over here where we solder this in, and that this spins up like it should. And then we can go back and put everything together. That way, we don't have to take everything back out to resolder something if there's not. So let's power this on and see what it does. And there you go. And yep, there it goes with the frag too. So yeah, that's the main thing. You can see that it's got it powered up and spinning. Everything's working like it should. The fan, it doesn't look like it has any kind of damage or anything on it. So yeah, this is good to go. We now have a 1.4 console with the 1.0 fan and heatsink set up on the GPU. And remember, you can do this on the 1.1, the 1.2, the 1.3, 4, 5. Okay, you can do this on any version except the 1.6. So this is really handy to add a cool little modification that doesn't take much. And again, these little kits that I sell aren't even that expensive. So it's a pretty cheap mod to do too. And if you're using the donor board of your own, you can do this for almost nothing. So again, I hope this has helped everybody out. And it's a cool little mod, and I hope everybody likes it. And until next time, guys.